Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, December 28th, 2022. I'm here today, joined by Clark Taylor and Coby Galenzoski. Once again, no Anthony or Soul today, but we're going to be discussing NXT from last night. I'll get onto that in a second. Dax Harwoods' plea to the Elite and CM Punk. And then also Coby's got a thread about Karrion Kross, which he wants to talk about at the end as well. So we have a jam-packed show for you guys today, and it's going to be a good one. But firstly, right, the plan for today's episode was NXT. I woke up this morning, watched NXT, and for some context, I haven't watched NXT for the last good few weeks, right? I watched the Mandy Rose Roxanne match, but outside of that, I haven't really watched it in a few weeks. And I just put on NXT this morning, watched it for the full 2 hours, sent over the topics for the show to Clark and Coby, and I get a message off Coby saying, that was last week. I go back on a BT player and I see that, yes, I watched last week's episode of NXT and this week's isn't available in the UK. So that was a great start to my day today. So I haven't actually fully watched NXT from last night. I've just read the full spoilers and all that. But thankfully, both Clark and Coby have done. But what I want to start off with today is Julius Creed last night had a hell of a performance from what I'm hearing. And the question is, at this point, it almost seems like they might be building him up, potentially, for a singles run. So do you split up the Creed brothers before the main roster? What do you think, Coby?
I guess, because that was one of the ones I did catch, is yes, Julius Creed and McDonagh had just a solid and entertaining match. Like, I mean, McDonagh's always great.
Yeah.
And then Julius has been able to match it whenever he is. And like, that's the thing. I saw him on the Republic Awards as one of the most improved because he truly is one of the most improved because he's always in the ring bringing something new. He's athletic, he's strong, and he truly is that guy. Brutus Creed theoretically could bring him down. But are they splitting them up now? Unless Brutus is going to side with Veer and Sangha. Like, I don't think they're going to split them up now, but they've really pushed Julius as this is probably the more singles guy out of the two because they gave him the Halloween Havoc match, again the ambulance match, which was fun, entertaining as well. But they have given him that position of he's better. So yeah. I don't know if they're splitting them up, but I do really see the future in Julius over Brutus. Yeah. So, I mean, the Creed brothers would be good on the main roster as a team, but I do think Julius could be the breakout one, could be the Shawn Michaels to Brutus's Jannetty.
That's what I
want to call it that.
Like, there's been so many tag teams throughout the years, where one member he's just got, star power while the other doesn't have, as big of a star power. But the issue is the main roster currently doesn't have too many, top tag teams. So the Creed brothers could, be a huge asset for the main roster's tag division and, could be a real contender for the Usos. But at the same time, if the long-term aim is to, put Julius Creed as, make him the big star, then is it really worth putting the time into Brutus to, build him on the main roster instead of just breaking them up now and sending Julius up on his own? What do you think, Clark?
So I think you both brought up really, really good points. And Julius has clearly been the standout of the two thus far. But I also think given their age, I think it really depends on how, and when I say I mean WWE creative in general, values Brutus in the long run. Do they think that he can develop and match the level that Julius has been able to show? And I do believe Julius is the older brother, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
I'll check that for you now.
I do believe he's the older of the two. And so if you think he can close that gap, then I don't think it's worth breaking them up. If you don't think he can, then it probably is because Julius has clearly separated himself of the two as far as in-ring talent. At the same time, though, given their amateur resumes, given how highly they were clearly valued,
Brutus is 2 years younger.
So I would say maybe you could split them up temporarily and let it, if you can find a way to let Brutus have some more time to develop, because I think it's a little bit unfair to Brutus as the younger brother in this instance. They both have very similar outstanding amateur wrestling background.
Yeah.
And Julius, being older by the nature of that, is going to have had more time to train in professional wrestling than Brutus has. And being paired together and learning from your older brother is always a great scenario. We've seen how Scott Steiner did that with Rick Steiner. That worked out well for him. We've seen it in other instances, with teams. I think I have a hard time deciding what I would do even in the short term, because I think each of the choices has implications long term that really need to be considered, right? And because what you don't want is to then have Brutus develop himself and you lose him almost, right? To AEW, to something else, to whatever have you, right?
MLW, he'd be a good fit for.
Heck, he could go back and train freestyle wrestling for MMA fighters, given his background, and become an unbelievable coach, right? And just to lose a level of talent like that, just because Julius has been the standout of the two thus far, I think would be the only thing I'm afraid of.
Yeah. No, I do agree with that. And I mean, listen, if you were to, I've been thinking about this for a while. I'll quickly just touch upon it, right? And you slightly did when you talking about Steiner there, right? But I don't know what it is, right? You guys can call me crazy for this because they are very different. But something about the Creed brothers just resembles the Steiner brothers for me ever so slightly. I don't exactly know what it is. But if they were to keep the Creed brothers together, I don't think I'd mind putting them with Bron Breakker and putting them as a faction to debut them to make a real quick impact on the main roster. I feel like that could be
Ben, and then how about a rivalry with Imperium out the gates?
Oh, that would be very good.
Now we're talking.
No, I'd go Brawling Brutes.
Either or,
because those are the stiff guys. Those are the stiff guys on the main roster that could handle the brutality. Imperium are amazing. But theoretically, no, I'd 100% go.
I'd be fine with both.
I'd 100% go in Brawling Brutes because you could theoretically just go. You could have them brawl and it'd be good.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I really feel like that faction, if they were to do it, I feel like that could be, a big call up and be a big statement straight away. And then even, you could then set Julius up for, singles run down the line if you do like a Shield type thing, a scenario, right. And then, maybe Brutus wouldn't work out on his own, but maybe he does improve and maybe he will be able to have a singles run down the line. So, we don't know what will happen, but I really feel like that could be an interesting faction if they do end up doing that.
Very cool.
But talking about something which I'm not sure if it does have a future is Skrypts. He's, basically formerly known as Reginald on the main roster, Reggie, whatever you want to call him. And I'm going to be honest, he's super athletic, right? He's got decent potential. I really do think that. Apart from this Skrypts gimmick, absolutely sucks. It looks like it's from the flipping dollar store, right? Axiom, who, by the way, is fantastic. I've already in the past criticized his attire for looking a little bit cheap, if I'm being honest.
Cheesy.
But Skrypts, his attire literally looks like it's from the pound store, the dollar store in America, right?
Yep.
It's awful, and everybody thought when the promo packages were hyping up Skrypts, everyone thought it was gonna be Dominic Dijak, and nope, it was like Reggie. He just doesn't fit the gimmick, and the mask looks awful. What are your thoughts, Clark?
The mask is brutal. When they first called Reggie up, and then I looked and I found out, so he's a former Cirque du Soleil performer. I mean, that is in and of itself, that's unbelievable for resume. And what he can do athletically is, and the way that could transfer for learning wrestling, I do think he has tons of potential. The gimmick doesn't fit it doesn't make sense to me. He's a guy that can do things athletically where he's so fast, he would be almost impossible to wrestle for like a strong guy or things like that. And that's where you see him at his best, is like when he was evading Sasha Banks in that match, right? When he was doing the backflip to avoid the
Yeah. Well,
she hit the
that
ropes
was
and-
his breakout match. That was
Yes.
fantastic.
it was incredible. And it
That was
seems
his
like
first match. too.
yeah,
Yeah.
the gimmick seems to fit somebody that would have more of like an offensive moveset and more, you know, they'd be more dominant in the ring than what Skrypts or what Reginald is built to do. And that's there's a disconnect there. I think I said this to Kobe when we watched his debut. It feels like he was the backup plan.
Yeah.
I don't know that for sure, obviously, but that's just how it feels. Is that it was the backup plan.
Maybe it was meant to be Dijak, and Dijak saw the mask and was like, I'm
No.
getting out of here. This looks shit.
Well,
Yeah.
see, the biggest thing I know from just from watching NXT week to week is that the vignettes were different. There were Dijak vignettes of him burning his T-bar mask, him burning whatever, him blah blah. He did a bunch of other stuff, and then there were other vignettes. So you're not going to hold two different vignettes per night for one character.
Everyone thought there was going to be Dijak
No.
who was Skrypts.
No,
So this is interesting, and I don't want to go too
Everyone
deep.
was saying it was going to be a Swerve.
A lot of people did. Me and
I
Anthony
don't
had a
think it-
theory that it
no.
might be Nash Carter.
Yeah, I think more people were on the Nash Carter
I
train.
thought it might have
this
been
is
Nash
someone
Carter.
who
That
can
was
come
Anthony.
back and feud with
Kobe, we talked
Wesley.
about that. It would make sense, and I think maybe at the last second they kind of pulled the plug on that and went, "Well, we've ran the vignettes. Somebody's got to be Skrypts."
Yeah.
I honestly don't think it was like I do think it was plan A. At the end of the day, I just think they've executed it poorly. They've
They have.
they've built the character as someone who's like coming back for revenge, and then it's just like, well, what is he coming back for? He was with Sasha.
Yeah.
He was with Carmel. He was Carmella's wine boy, and then he was Nia Jax's side piece or whatever, however you want to call
He's
it.
coming back
And
for
to your point,
revenge
Kobe,
on his bad booking.
That's
and the
what it
revenge
is.
he's getting on his bad booking is by having
Worst
more
booking.
bad booking. Yeah, it's
Worst booking.
Like
it's
I
shit,
don't know.
yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Let's try
Like,
to make
that's-
it worse.
Yeah.
How can I make my own gimmick worse? That is what he essentially, his idea must have been. But
I mean, the mask is better now. Like, I mean, it was shit the first day, and it's somewhat a little better now
right,
because it's
yeah,
a newer mask, but it still sucks.
it is still shit. Like it's locked cheap from the beginning, and I don't really think that there's a future in WWE for Skrypts. I think as Reginald, there wasn't either, but it was entertaining. Like you could have done something.
There's something that you can do. I think it's going to have to be another repackage, which is always tough, but
Yeah.
I do
Dude,
think
it's repackaged.
he's so athletically talented. There's a place, right? It's just
Somewhere.
it's got to find the right spot.
Yeah, and I mean, you'd think that they'd find a way to figure that out, considering that's clearly been a strength all along. But this gimmick it's weird. There's multiple weird creative decisions on NXT, and at times it really like this bar storyline at the minute, right? Between Farlan and what's her name?
Kiana James.
Kiana, yeah, that's it. I'm sorry. Why? Firstly, why on earth are we meant to care about this? Secondly, the acting's atrocious, right? And it's not like atrocious in the same way Dominic's acting's bad, where it's entertaining. It's just bad. I'm like, I literally don't care. Like, it feels like NXT, they're experimenting different storylines and all that, and a lot of them aren't hitting. But it's it is what it is. But the entire bar feud at the minute, I just thought it was dumb as hell.
This is when this is
it.
when we need a soundboard of Soul saying simp,
Oh,
because
yes.
that's what Brooks Jensen is right now. But I mean, so like that's the thing is like Kiana James's gimmick is she's this business profound woman who's I think she has multiple degrees or something like that, and she's working on like she ended up it like I don't know, it's weird at the same time.
Gimmick.
It's not a shit gimmick. It's her being the rich intellect woman. who can technically outsmart the other person, and that was how she didn't debut, but that's how like she got a surprise victory off of Indy Hartwell a few months ago, and then it was just like, well, that was the way they were rolling, is she cheated to win, and she outsmarted. But like, I mean, if you're going from a storytelling standpoint, it's an all right story, but does it belong in wrestling? That's the disconnect.
Yeah.
Is it was an all right story because
it's just
you
stealing
could
them at
feel,
Hardy.
no, not at all.
There's a way to tell that story better in wrestling. I don't know if it's doesn't
it's
belong
not
in
Matt
wrestling.
Hardy
Money
at
Matt.
all.
You could tell almost any story in wrestling with better quality performances. And I hate to knock performers, but it's just been poorly executed from start to finish.
Yeah.
I love bars as much as the next guy. I am a legitimate candidate to be invested in this one, Kobe. And I'll tell you what, I'm just not. Like it's and that's not enough. I'm a fan of both sides, but I just don't care. It's too convoluted. It's too the poor acting that Ben mentioned. The vignettes are overdone, overproduced. It doesn't come across as natural. It doesn't come across as something that you'd really, really invest yourself in from a character's perspective. But like, to your point on the story itself, like, no, there's a story to be told about like owning a bar and all business wise and stuff. It's just not been told well. And
I don't even know if there's a way to do it in wrestling, honestly, to do it well. I really don't.
There's a way to tell almost any story to create a rivalry in wrestling.
Well,
if you know what I mean.
I did,
like,
but I mean, it's good. Like, it's just,
No.
I don't know if they could have. I mean, Jensen's acting in that segment, well, last week, this week for me, he was laughing during it. He was meant to be serious. He was like, I can't believe they even kept the camera on him. It was like bad.
That's what I mean about it.
Because
Ben,
he just
right?
it was so bad that he was like, I'm a decent wrestler. Why on earth am I here doing this?
I think if it's better performed,
why
it's a story that can be told, though, right? If he's into the scene and not laughing at himself, don't you think they could lock us in theory?
I think it was bad he laughed, if I'm being honest. Right? It was unprofessional. I just don't think he could have helped himself. But it's just such a cringe story. I feel like that's what they're doing in NXT. They're experimenting certain stuff. And I feel like some of these storylines with the over-the-top acting in these, pre-recorded segments, I don't think they're working, if I'm being honest. I don't. There's been tons of them they've done. I mean, some of the Cameron Grimes ones were good. But outside of Grimes, I mean... And Tony D'Angelo, he's had a few good ones as well. But outside of them two, most of them have been just real flops, Steve's, the real backstage stories they're trying to tell.
I'm starting to actually laugh at initially I thought the Chase U was maybe the most cringe stuff, but I'm starting to actually giggle at some of those segments.
Yeah.
I will admit, I got to give them a little credit. They've started to maybe find something for me. It's kind of funny the last few times. I'm starting to maybe that'd be the only one I would add, but I'm in agreement with you on the rest of them. It's been a tough road.
Yeah.
Especially given where the product was just a couple years ago. Right.
Yeah.
And obviously it moved to Tuesday nights. Whatever. We're not going to get into that conversation, but and then the rebrand and all of that. It's just it is a shame.
New rebrand as well,
and double rebrand. It's just a shame to. There was a time where it felt almost like the most important WWE show, and almost I say, but like it is a shame to see that wasn't necessarily sustainable. I get why.
Yeah, I mean, it was as for the developmental brand, for it to become, I feel like that's part of the reason why Vince. There was many reasons why NXT 2.0 came about. One of them, which I touched upon the other day, with the age thing. But I do think that part of Vince was worried that NXT was getting too important. I do think that might have been an element, right? But you just mentioned a tough road. Let's talk about, another tough road here, right? And that is the tough road that Dax Harwood wants CM Punk and the Elite to go down, right? Dax Harwood did an interview. He's done his first podcast episode where people were like, is CM Punk going to be on it? Is he not going to be on it? The advertising for it was so confusing. He's not on it.
Yeah, he is.
Is he?
He was literally in the photos that they posted of them recording it. Punk was there in attendance. So unless
I swear,
Punk
I swear
Punk
today
is-
he's clarified. Okay,
unless
producer
Punk
Kobe,
is
check
there
it,
to
but I'm
sit,
pretty sure this morning.
But I don't think
Harwood
I don't
was
think he
doing
talked,
on
Kobe.
it.
I think is the point, right? I think he's in
unless
attendance,
he
but he
was there,
didn't talk.
unless he was there to sit there.
No, that's
Yeah,
what I mean. He
I
was. I think he
think
just was in
He's
attendance. He was a
clarified
guest,
he wasn't,
but not on the
podcast.
show.
But anyway, Harwood, as head of the debut episode coming out, he sent some of the transcriptions to Fightful, and Fightful have revealed this quote. Dax Harwood said, "If we can make it work, we can set up the future of professional wrestling for a long time, and we can change the course of professional wrestling for a very long time. When you think about it, unselfishly, we are doing this for wrestlers 20 to 30 years down the road, so guys and girls can make a living." So Dax Harwood was really, really pleading in the podcast for Punk and the Elite to make up and to just sort everything out so it can continue. Clark, do you think there's any possibility of this happening?
To be totally honest, I've kind of been that guy with both Kobe and Anthony. We have these discussions often on some of our calls during Raw and Dynamite and whatnot. And I completely understand if you don't think it's possible, but so much time between, given the injury is almost the key to me. He's got 7 months to sit and think and go through rehab and do all this. And that's why I do think it's a possibility. And in fact, I'll put my name on this. I think we will see CM Punk. We will hear Cult of Personality in an AEW arena in 2023.
Wow.
I will say that. I believe, because, and I don't want to get too into it, but I also believe CM Punk, who I've been a fan of, I'm from Chicago myself, got my Cub hat on right now. He knows that if he can't work this out, where do you go from there, man? And who else can you work with in the wrestling industry? And I also think CM Punk is such a smart dude that there is so much juice left after Brawl Out. After that press conference, there's
a lot of money to be made.
There is so much juice and so much money. And that talks. And I think at the end of the day, as easy as it was in the moment to be like, well, never see him again in AEW, of course. And logically, that makes sense. I don't even think you're wrong if you thought that. And he does eventually come back, because there were times that I thought that. But there's just so much time here and so much money. And that, in the long run, and it's the most logical place where he can stay and work. And that's why, yeah, that's what I believe.
And March 76 is saying that if Vince brought back Jarrett and Warrior, then TK can bring back Punk. Anything is possible in wrestling.
Yes,
and that's
sir.
a very good point. It is a very, very good point in that. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, though, right after the Elite, doing what they've done about Punk recently, I don't think the Elite in a million years would put their egos aside, right? And I'm not here shitting on the Elite, right? I think Kenny Omega, the Bucks are great. But I'm going to be honest, I don't think they can put their egos aside enough to let Punk back, in AEW. And I feel like TK kind of maybe, dug himself in a hole when he brought back Colt Cabana. The way they brought him back was an FU to Punk as well. Like, they could have brought him back in another way, and they did it, as a proper FU to Punk. And Dax also spoke on Colt Cabana on the podcast. And Dax Harwood seems to have an issue with Colt Cabana because Colt Cabana did an impression of his accent. And Dax Harwood did not like that very much on the same time they've ever interacted. But it feels like, once again, if they do bring him back, there could be even more drama then between the Bucks and Colt Cabana, and then FTR and Punk. There's just a lot of stuff. But I mean, if the Elite have any common sense about it, right, they'd put their egos aside and at least do the storyline and let Punk go out wrestling, his own way. Because it would bring in a lot of money for their company. And it doesn't have to be Punk, doesn't have to come back for good here. He can come back for just a few months, have them do the big storyline, have Punk retire, whatever, earn AW boatloads of money, bring a few more eyes to the product, and then from there, there's a lot more you can do with it.
Yeah, finish out his contract, per se, right? Whatever that may be, whatever's left on it. And then right off into the sunset, and then he can do this. He could podcast with us.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll be great.
Join the daily broadcast.
Yeah, he's in.
Right?
Yeah, Punk, we got keeping the seat warm for you.
Yeah,
Mr. Brooks, by the way. All due respect. If you seriously though, got the seat warm. You let us know. You're out there listening.
Yeah, no, I mean Punk. There's more from a give in wrestling for sure, and I feel like AEW. I don't think he's going to go anywhere else. I think AEW is the only shot that there is to bring him back, and I don't think it will happen. But I think if Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks are smart, they'll put their egos aside, even if they dislike the guy. They'll put their egos aside for the sake of AEW, their own company, the company which has their name, the Elite, in the the name of the company
is in the letters. Yeah, it's in the letters of the right. It's It's all Elite. Exactly.
And somebody said, join the podcast. I'll go back to UFC. Maybe
not the latter. Go, Jacob. Yeah. I love that tweet.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything left from in UFC apart from there's not even a commentary role from in the UFC. I don't think. I think there's MMA commentary roles, but not in UFC. So he's in a really bad situation now where he doesn't have much left to do. His comics haven't been too successful. His movies haven't been too successful. So I feel like if it's definitely in his interest to return to AEW, but I honestly think that it's in the Bucks' court. And Tony Khan, I'm certain Tony Khan would be smart enough to bring him back. I think it's just whether or not the Bucks would allow it. And if they're sensible, then they should. What do you think, Kobe?
See, that's the thing is this is of course that touchy subject, and I do think Tony Khan picked his side with bringing back the Elite so soon. I mean, say what you want about the Chicago show after Full Gear. I genuinely do believe that was them playing into the fact that they were getting booed out of the building.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say, they planned to do the shots at CM Punk that they did, the biting. I think it was spur of the moment. I do. I want to believe. I want to believe Young Bucks are that smart to say, "Hey, we are getting booed out of the building. Let's continue to get booed out of the building." As weird as it sounds,
though, I think the fact that they're gung ho to do that means that they'd be willing to let him back. If you're willing to go that far, I think that was more a sign.
That's not even far though.
Well, by the way, you don't usually joke about stuff you're really mad about, or you're going to chase legally, or all that stuff. You don't joke about it.
You do.
No, not if there's a legal situation or all of the stuff that would prevent Punk from ever returning. You don't usually joke about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The Young Bucks.
You don't want to talk about it.
The Young Bucks do have a bit of a childish sense of humor, though, where they wouldn't think about that necessarily.
No,
they do have a childish sense of humor. And that's not me insulting them. That's that humor's got so much over for them.
No, and I think it's hilarious myself too.
It's the success of being the Elite. It's their childish sense of humor. But at the same time, I feel like I really do believe that Tony Khan wasn't aware. I believe that much. But I think that Kenny and the Bucks are if we're being booed, let's do this or whatever. I think it was planned because it was just so in sync. And I 100% believe the GTS was planned. I 100% think that. Otherwise, I don't think Pac would have prepared for it like he did.
I mean, I don't know. That's the thing.
I hear you on that too.
We said it in the comments right there. If Vince brought Jared and Warrior back, then TK can bring back Punk. Anything is possible. But I don't want to say based on that comment. We've seen it this year in wrestling. There's so much that happened. Just
Cody back to WWE.
In general, Punk can go back to WWE too. That's a big factor. And I want to say it, but I don't want to sound like that type of person. I genuinely believe there's a bigger chance he would go back to WWE.
So I'll say this too, to double down on that though, Kobe, because I hear where you're coming from. I think there's a bigger chance he goes back to WWE if he goes back to AEW first.
No,
I don't.
I
do disagree with that one.
See, this is the thing. Is we still got time. This is the thing I want to talk about. It is if you want to believe it, you can believe it. But they're all the news and all those things but genuinely believe there's a massive divide in the locker room of AEW. When there's
not as bad as it was.
It's not as bad as it was. That
now.
news is toned down.
Exactly.
I get in September that was
it's toned down, but in September it was so down the middle. You either were pro Elite or you were pro CM Punk. We kind of have the Elite people getting their spot. I genuinely believe that Punk's not even worth bringing back because
he is to WWE.
Because there's money to be made.
Wait a minute. You can't have.
There's money to be made in AEW though too. To be honest,
yeah,
I think
there's money to be
made. There's money to be made both ways.
You can't have both. Why would he be worth it to WWE and not AEW? That makes no sense to me.
Because AEW already went through the divide.
But then, so would WWE by theory if you brought it back.
How is there?
And if he could prove that, he's capable of being apologetic by coming back to AEW and finishing out his contract, wouldn't it be more sensible for Triple H to forgive CM Punk for prior things that he's done?
I don't think there'll be enough gas left in the tank if you leave it another year. I think that if Punk's going to go to WWE, it has to be fairly soon, and I feel like that's why there's an issue with the no compete clause that Punk has the issue with on the rumored buyout.
And I agree with you on the H thing too, but at the same time, what value is he to WWE other than just as like a middle finger to AEW, basically at this moment? Because you're basically taking a guy that went rogue, finger quotes, ruined that, not things that I believe, right? Ruined the locker room or whatever, and split it down the middle, did all that, and then you're bringing him in just as like an FU to your competition, and he's not going to poison your own locker room unless that's the story that you're going to tell. Is that you're going to bring in, unless you're going to redo Vince McMahon, I'm bringing back the biggest poison, the NWO, like. Unless you're going to retell that story, what story is there to be told with a CM Punk who's, as you've just presented, Coby, split the locker room in two, is impossible to work with, and blah, blah, blah. We just heard Dax Harwood talk about how great he is to work with and how he wants him to come back to AEW. I would say there's a better chance of him appearing ever in WWE, maybe a Hall of Fame scenario, maybe not a match, maybe not in the way we're picturing towards like this Mania. But if he goes back and, water under the bridges with the Elite as best he can, works together, even agree to disagree, does those type of things, and takes those steps, works out his contract, then there's a scenario for him to make a WWE type appearance. That makes more sense to me personally. That's just the way I look at it on that one.
Yeah, I feel like the one thing I'll say is this. I feel like he could, if he goes back to AEW or whatever, I feel like he could return afterwards in a Hall of Fame way or something like that to WWE. But I don't think that I think unless CM Punk returns to WWE within the next 12 months, I don't think it's happening, full stop. I believe that the clock's really, really ticking on that. And it's why I am actually edging closer now to believing that there is maybe a slightly higher chance that he returns to AEW than goes to WWE. But again, at the same time, I really, truly do believe that it'd be a good call for AEW to bring him back for a short storyline to finish things off, make some money, have him return backstage, shaking the hands of the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, putting everything aside to the locker room, so that stops the divide in the locker room. Have, make sure that both sides are like, you cannot be talking shit about each other behind the scenes now. That just cannot happen. And then you just, have on screen, have them go at each other. And it will be a bit controversial or whatever, but I feel like it won't do that much harm backstage as long as they start it off and everybody involved puts their egos aside, which is clearly difficult for all four men in this
situation. You've seen it with Matt Hardy and Edge in the past, right? Being able to put egos aside and in gnarly.
There's more reason then to not put their egos aside.
That's a wilder personal situation than even this one, right? And so it is. There's precedent, right? It's happened before. And it can happen again. And so that I think the most likely that we see CM Punk in any ring is going to be in an AEW ring. I guess is what I would, as my main point. I would say that is my personal belief. Now I will fully come on and let you guys know that I'm wrong if he shows up in WWE, and I'll crack up about it too. It'll be fun, but that is a possibility.
Nice. I feel certainly like there is a possibility now, but it'll be crazy if Dax Harwood is the one to bring everybody back together. That would sum up how crazy 2022 has been.
That's a storyline in and of itself.
It'd be Dax Harwood and Danhausen. It'd be those two who have brought things back together, right?
Yeah,
because Danhausen's the only one out of everybody who was like friends with both, which is crazy.
gets along with everyone.
Yeah, but everybody loves Danhausen, especially Anthony Ricciardi. Shout out to him. But he will be on the podcast in a couple of days, I believe. Right. Coby, I believe you have a thread.
Tomorrow. He's on tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Oh, nice.
He's on tomorrow.
Nice. Of course he is. Yes, you are right.
He's possibly on tomorrow.
No, it's 100%.
Yeah, 100%. Great.
Recently
great.
confirmed. I can confirm.
And so, yeah, tomorrow is going to be an exciting podcast, right? I won't go into too much detail now because I know Kobe's got a thread that he wants to get into. But tomorrow's podcast is going to be me, Clark, and Anthony Ricciardi with a special guest. And that special guest is Laurie Taylor.
Wait, no, that's Friday.
No, that's Friday.
Friday.
Ignore me.
No, Friday.
My days are all over the place. Tomorrow, the fourth person is Ignacio, right? Because here's a little bit of backstage gossip, right? Backstage drama here at Wrestling Republic. And the backstage drama is that Ignacio wasn't very happy about one of Clark's comments the other day, where Clark said that he thought Batista is actually a bigger star outside of WWE than Stone Cold is. And Ignacio was not a fan of that comment.
I'm gonna clear a few things up too before Ignacio comes on. I said movie star.
Movie star, okay.
Movie star.
Movie star.
Not net worth, not any of that. I also explicitly stated if I'm playing devil's advocate before I said the statement. And so a little bit more backstage. Ignacio may have mentioned that he had to turn the show off. And so when I heard that, I go, well, I've never been invited on his show to debate him, but he can come on this one and debate me about it.
He's coming on the show.
I mean, we've been invited.
We've been invited or whatever, but not explicitly by Ignacio. But I'm just ready for him to get me on Stone Cold Batista history, anything he'd like. He said debate. I get it. He's a master debater, as I know. And this is going to be one of those things where I think he's got some tricks up his sleeve. I've got a few up my own. It could be a fun show.
It will be a fun show. There's no
might go
history. It will be.
For history. Well, for me, it's going to be fun. I don't know about Ignacio. I'm kidding. Oh, Grace. Geez Louise. That's sweet of you. Fighting for my life. That is sweet of you, Grace. And I'll tell you what, if I was fighting for my life, it would look a lot more intense. But
with an Ignacio fan in the
I'll let you know. Yeah, that's an Ignacio diehard. But it'll be a good one. We're going to talk Batista. We're going to talk Stone Cold. We're going to talk, about what I said, that he had to turn off my show. It's a shame. Yeah. I've never watched one of his to have the opportunity to turn one off. But,
You've never watched an Ignacio? That's a lie. Come on.
No, it's a lie.
It's a lie.
No,
but
of course I watch his shows.
Yeah,
He's on the same team as me. I thought that was so mean. Jeez Louise. But we'll get him tomorrow. It'll be good.
It's like an AEW wrestler saying they don't watch AEW Rampage. Oh wait, no.
Nobody does. Okay. Okay. Anyway, just to kind of talk about it, and I saw this, and I saw it as a post on Facebook, and I was just like, "Is there any truth to it?" I searched Twitter, and I ended up finding someone was allegedly in attendance for the actual MSG show on Monday. And so they did the IC title ladder match, Madcap Moss, Kofi Kingston, Santos Escobar, Shinsuke, and Gunther. Gunther wins, of course, and that's when intermission happened. So this is what it is intermission, WWE shop showing, QR code pickup, blah, blah, blah. They did an NXT recap of showing Grayson doing the metal vest. And then he said, so next match, Killer Cross versus Drew Gulak. This should be a squash. It's a shame because I really like Drew Gulak. He was one of my favorites from a Philly-based company. Coming back from intermission with this match is a choice. Crowd is restless, not in a good way. This match isn't a squash, and this is boring chant has started. Holy shit. Now a boring chant. The crowd hates this match. Now a you suck chant. I haven't seen a crowd reject a wrestler / match like this in a while. End the match chant. Holy shit. Cross just circled around Gulak in a suplex setup position to the hard camera side. Funniest fucking thing in this match. This armbar has been going on for what feels like 5 minutes. I can only imagine what it feels like in the ring. Gulak comeback has no heat. People are pissed this match is still going on. Huge this is boring chant now. Cross has no impact in his offense at all. Cross ended the match and the people are calling it the Hidden Blade. What a trifed match. The worst match I've seen live this year. It's going to take a lot to pull the crowd back. New York City street fight, Liv Morgan versus Shayna Baszler.
That was just somebody that was at the show?
That was someone at the show live tweeting it,
Whoa.
which I like it. I like the fact that they live tweet. I like hearing these type of things, and I know Meltzer likes hearing those things as well because he specifically says, "Oh, email them to me." But I want to know, is this criticism genuine for Karrion Kross? And Ben, your mic.
Sorry about that. Once again, I accidentally mute my mic. But yeah, honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of Karrion Kross at all. Right? I'm not. I don't think. I feel like Scarlett is the best thing about him, and I don't mean that like in a jokey way. I feel like Scarlett brings the act together, and I feel like without her, when he was called up on his own, it didn't make any real sense. And he wasn't anything special at all. But I feel like with her, it's a decent act or whatever. And I'm not a big fan of him. I'm not really ever excited for one of his matches. But I'm going to be honest, he's not that bad. There's significantly, for Drew Gulak, who's obviously fantastic in the ring, for him versus Karrion Kross to be the worst match you've ever seen live, I've got to question how many matches you've seen live. Surely, obviously I wasn't there, but I can't imagine it was that bad. What do you think, Clark?
I was going to say, the live wrestling, you kind of have to, sitting close is almost always, to me, more impressive than televised wrestling. So I really, it would have had to be extremely bad. I don't know. I would agree with your sentiment on how much live wrestling have you seen, because unless you're just really trying to nitpick, I can't see being that negative about a match. Even I'm not a big Cross fan myself. I'm not, not that I'm not a fan or whatever. I agree with you, what you said about Scarlett being the key to the operation. It's hard. It's also Madison Square Garden. It's New York. No, I love New York, but it's a different crowd and a different animal. It's a tough crowd. Yeah. And if they had a bad match, it's still a house show. I get the Garden house shows are a bigger deal, but I am also if they're really that big of a deal, then they're not going to be a house show and they're going to televise them. So I think the wrestlers go out because it's the Garden, it's special or whatever, right? But I don't necessarily even, I don't want to overread too much into that, even given the history of Madison Square Garden house shows. That seems tame compared to some of the stories we've seen come out of Garden shows, where Diesel winning the title on a house show, the curtain call happened on a house show at the Garden. You know what I mean? Even last year with the blading on Brock with Roman Reigns.
Yeah, Styles a couple of years ago.
I by comparison to stuff like that comes out of house shows at MSG in New York, that to me is just some dude that sat wherever he sat and was I didn't like that match, and that's what it sounds.
But if that's the thing, if the crowd was genuinely chanting, "This is boring," and the match. Is that a reflection of what we see on television? Because we see this on TV, and like you said, we're not excited to see a Cross match, and it genuinely comes off as he's a slow, methodical wrestler who his gimmick doesn't match, because his gimmick is he's bringing the end, and then he's just going to do a methodical match. It doesn't match. His style doesn't.
I don't know. A
if
cold-blooded
this-
killer might take his time.
That's
Like,
also
I- like,
true.
I
Maybe
don't
he's
know.
being tactical about
Right.
it. You know?
I would say too. On the flip side, I hear where you're coming from there, Kobe, but right, like I would be careful on the working style there because I totally do know what you mean about like there is some sort of disconnect on the cross thing of late. It may have just been a bad performance, right? I might chalk it up to that too. It may have just been they had a bad night. It can happen, right? Wrong place, wrong time. You know, you both have a couple of stumbles along the way. The crowd loses interest, and leave it to a Madison Square Garden crowd, which is always a great crowd, to hijack a show and have have chance like that. You know what I mean? And it happens in Chicago. I love Chicago crowds too, and it happens there. It happens in Philly. It happens in plenty of cities right across the world, not just in America. By the way, we've seen it on
In the
UK
UK
shows.
too.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
The best crowds also like to hijack. That's
also
the
like to
issue
hijack.
with it.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, is navigating that, like the heat. So you can get everybody to a scorching point, but at some point, if you can't keep them there, you may actually cost yourself elsewhere on the card. And I think that's something to note too. There, right? Do we know who they followed, Kobe? By chance, like if they followed a banger, then that would make a ton of sense, right?
Well, okay, so it was the IC title ladder match.
Oh yeah,
And
which
it was
was very good.
They came back from intermission with this match.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
So it is technically the crowd cooler, or you get
that may be a card placement issue as much as it is a performance issue.
I wouldn't worry too much about this unless they start chanting boring and on TV. That's when you're like, okay, this is bad.
This is getting out of hand.
But until we see that, I don't think that it's too much of a worry. I think WWE need to be like, okay, we need to make sure Cross's stuff's a bit more entertaining for the next few weeks to, let this all die down. The Rey Mysterio stuff, it needs to have some good angles over the next couple of weeks. But I don't
think have a good match with Rey Mysterio. Come on. Like, anyone can have a good match with Rey.
Though, Cross, to be fair to him.
Well, I mean, his McIntyre matches were out of the top, and then his NXT stuff was solid.
Yeah.
But theoretically, if you cannot have a good match with Rey Mysterio, something's wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
But because Rey is just Rey, he's a legend. He's one of the. I mean, technically, you said this yesterday, Ben, that Edge is the longest tenured man. While Rey's been wrestling longer.
That wasn't actually me yesterday. That wasn't me.
Was that Anthony?
That was Anthony, I believe.
Yeah, longest in the WWE.
I think he did say something. I think he did say something about it. But yeah.
No, longest in the WWE is Edge. Longest career would be Rey.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like Rey's this the smaller, baby face that, Cross needs to be able to work with if, he's going to be a star. Absolutely. So I feel like it is going to be a real defining moment for Cross, whether or not, he can become that star that WWE want him to be, that he has, he has the look for. But it's really bad if this is true, by the way, that this happened in the Garden. It's bad.
I think it did. I think it did, because you wouldn't live tweet that they were getting those chants.
Yeah, but maybe it was just there was a few chants and they put around where the person was sitting or something like that.
That too.
But it's I don't think they need to worry until it happens on TV. In which case, that's when you do we pull the plug? Is he's on decent money? Is he not worth the investment anymore? Just like we talked about earlier with some of the guys in NXT. But anyway, that is all for today, guys. We're going to finish it up here. Thank you for joining us. It's been a really, really good episode here today. We've had some good conversations. And tomorrow, I feel like the conversation is going to heat up a whole lot more when Ignacio and Clark go head to head. It's going to be intense. I'm going to have to try and moderate the thing.
It's going to be easier than anyone thinks. I'm too nice, man. I can't argue that hard. I just like wrestling it up. I'm hyped, but I mean, it's going to be great, though. Yeah, it's going to be great.
It's going to be great. I bet he's saying this now, and it's going to be a complete war tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow, Ignacio. Sorry, let me cut the promo. Beef. Yeah, Jake. By the way, Jake is kind of. That's our Friday guest. That's our Friday guest.
That's our Friday guest.
Absolutely, it's gonna be a blast.
And we'll hype that episode up tomorrow as well. Right, thank you everybody for joining us today. We'll be back same time. Actually, no, we'll be back an hour later tomorrow. An hour later than we started today tomorrow.
1 hour later.
Yep. And it'll always be that time on Thursdays, I think. Right. But thank you,
Yes.
everybody, and we'll see you
Maybe.
tomorrow.
See you
Bye.
tomorrow.